Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Game for Thought live stream right here at Howest School's campus for Digital Arts and Entertainment. My name is Allie Weiss, and I am our ethics coordinator in international game development here at our campus DIE, where we have our beautiful live stream studio through which we are now streaming Game for Thought. We're really excited to have you back here on Twitch for yet another panel discussion this month about the metaverse. So if you're just scrolling through Twitch, if you are a student or beyond and haven't seen Game for Thought before, no worries. I'm going to fill you in a little bit about what this series is about. So every month we go live right here on Twitch, and we basically open up a space for discussion and conversation about the important ethically relevant topics in the game industry. So Digital Arts and Entertainment is a game design, game development institution, and sometimes with such a highly technical curriculum, it can be difficult to make space for these conversations about the more socially relevant topics. So last academic year, we decided, you know what, we are going to open up a space on Twitch to discuss these topics, a different topic every month with industry professionals, professors, and students. So we're really excited to have you here again for our stream about a very hot topic these days, the metaverse. Basically how this stream will go, we will begin with a guest lecture, this time from Elizabeth Strickler. Elizabeth is the Director for Media Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Georgia State University. So we'll start with a 20-minute guest lecture from her about the history of the metaverse. For those of you who have no idea about the metaverse, we'll get our senses before we head into the panel discussion. The panel discussion will also include Elizabeth. Also on the panel, we have Kimberly Vall. She is the co-founder of the Fair Play Alliance. We also have Dr. Georgios Yannikakis. He is the director of the Institute for Digital Games at University of Malta. And what's really exciting this time is we have two DIE students on the panel. We have Leonard DeRook, and he is a second-year game development student. We also have Kobe Van de Weer, and he is a first-year game graphics production student. So again, we'll start with a guest lecture by Elizabeth. Sure, it's going to be great. Then we'll take a little bit of a pause and we will jump right into the panel discussion. Just a quick point, if you would like to submit a question or you just want to hear something from the panelists, submit it in the chat. All you have to do is put a capital Q before whatever it is you want to write, and go ahead, put it in the chat, and we will get to it in just a little bit when we get to the general audience Q&A. Again, so excited to have you here tonight. Let's talk more about the metaverse and find out a little bit more about what it really is about. Without further ado, I would love to pass it over to Elizabeth Strickler from Georgia State University. Elizabeth. All right, Elizabeth, we are so happy to have you on with us, joining from underseas, it looks like. Tell us a little bit about the metaverse.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Uh, how are you today? I'm feeling a little wet, but I am excited to take you all on a thought journey with me and the other panelists. But first, Ali asked me to give a brief overview of the metaverse. So I'm going to attempt to do that, but really, this is really just a conversation starter. So I'm going to share my screen and get started. But first, I think I'm going to switch. Let's see. Hmm. Let's see if I can do this. All right. Well, actually, I'm just going to stay here. Let me share my screen and go live. And I'm going to do this. Actually, there we go. Okay. So, um, I'm Elizabeth Strickler, and I'm the Director of Media Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the Creative Media Industries Institute at Georgia State University. In that
Elizabeth, I'm
matter,
so sorry to interrupt you.
yeah.
You are so it says now on the screen share with people and group. So I think you might be on the wrong presentation mode for the
Oh,
presentation. So maybe just
okay.
really quickly unshare your screen.
Okay. Stop streaming. Okay.
All
And
right.
now share it again.
Yeah, and then just share it one more time.
Okay. Stream channel one. Go live. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. You are all good. All right, we'll try again.
Okay. I see it there. Do you?
Yes, I see it. I see it perfectly.
Okay.
So now, awesome. And we're all good to go. All right, I'm going to
Okay.
stop bothering you now. Go right ahead.
Okay, cool. All right. So, as I was saying, what's important about where I work, which is the Creative Media Industries Institute at Georgia State University, is the fact that we're working out some kind of partnership with Howest and with uh, Atlanta and Belgium and or Georgia and Belgium. So that's what's important about where I work. Also, I think that our lab, our institute, is similar to the DAE at Howest. So that's what's important. This is where I work, and we can talk about that later. I also have I've just started working part-time with the business school as well. And we'll get into why that is, somebody from such a creative background as myself. Okay. And before I get started, I want to just give a send up to all the speakers that I had in my lecture series for this past semester, because what I'm presenting is an amalgamation of everything I've learned from the speakers in the series that I curated um, on the metaverse and the future of work and play. And we will provide that link at the end because all the lectures were recorded and are free and open to the public. So some of the things that I say are definitely stealing from these great speakers that I had. So the way I often talk about the metaverse at the beginning is that everything in this world will be recreated in the virtual world. Okay, so like I'm kind of stuck in the metaverse right now and I'm not moving. I think that's what's happening. But IRL is the in real life person at the top, and then the mirrored person is in the metaverse, sometimes known as an avatar, uh, and also a digital twin. But with imagination and without the constraints of the laws of nature, um, the metaverse can be much more than what we are constrained to by physics and reality. Uh, so the imagination is such a key component to what the metaverse is. And I want you to keep that in mind. So I'm going to give a quick example of the real world and then the metaverse. And then we're going to go into a little bit of history. This is an art gallery. Most of you have been to museums and art galleries. You can recognize this experience probably.
Hey, Elizabeth,
And
it's
this,
Allie again. I'm so sorry to interrupt you once again. It's me from the
what's up?
metaverse.
Yeah.
I think your slides aren't going along, so maybe just try to click.
What?
I can only see the first slide.
What? That's crazy. Okay. So can you see, like, do you see that slide?
So I see the hello slide.
What? Okay, so let
But
me,
what you could do, maybe if you, just try it one more time. Worst case scenario, then maybe we just don't go full screen on that presentation, which isn't the end of the world.
and maybe it's got a resolution, smoother video. Maybe I can just do do you think it's a resolution thing?
I don't think so.
Okay, let's see. Can you see that?
I can see this perfectly. So
Okay.
worst case scenario, yeah, maybe we'll just do that.
Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, it's perfect like this way. So maybe we'll just keep it like this.
Okay,
Okay,
fine.
sorry for interrupting. Keep on
No, no, no,
going.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, you can see everything in this world will be recreated correctly, correct? Okay. And then,
Awesome.
okay, so this is the self in the mirror world, the digital twin, but without imagination. I mean, but with imagination and without the constraints of the laws of nature, uh, you, whoops, you can be a lot more than what uh, what natural laws allow. This is where the imagination really can run wild, and that's really important. So, uh, Allie, can you see this art gallery?
Totally see the art gallery.
Okay,
So
perfect.
we're good
Okay,
to go.
so okay, cool. So this is an experience that most of you all have, and then this is a virtual art gallery, and I hope you all can see this animation. Okay, so what's interesting is that that's sort of a mirrored version of an art gallery, except for that the uh, art is moving and is 3D, and you can imagine you could go a lot further than that. But again, we're here to talk about what is the metaverse. And so, sort of, an amalgamation of what many people say and many people talk about is the metaverse is an iteration of the internet, the next iteration, or the next significant development in global communications that is persistent and ever present, social and shared, immersive and three dimensional, and interoperable and connected. And we will discuss this further when we get to the panel, but are we there yet? Halfway? Maybe? Definitely not. Still don't know. I will refer to Matthew Ball, who's a leader in the academic writings of the metaverse. And, he says that it's a transition and we're slowly transitioning. And there's not a flip where you're just like, okay, now we're the metaverse. I would propose that right now, as we are all working through being on Zoom, et cetera, that we're, um, part halfway into the metaverse. So, how did we get here? All right. So, because many of you are game design and development majors or study games, you'll be interested to know that many people say that games are the parent of the metaverse. And SimCity, which is a simulation game that is 30 years old now, was one of the, or originations of imagining a virtual world that would simulate uh, the real world. Um, so, so this goes back a ways. Probably the thing that you'll hear the most about the history of the metaverse is Second Life. Second Life started in 2003. This is actually a picture from 2003, and so my avatar underwater is a little bit of a send up to that. This is a person flying through the air. So the imagination of what you could do without natural constraints was, has been around for a while. All right, Facebook, a way to connect people to people, which is one of the rules of the metaverse, is that it's connected. Um, went public in 2006. So that's 15 years ago. So basically, all of this is to say that the idea of the idea of the metaverse has been around, and people have been working on it um, for a while. Another um, parent, shall I say, of the metaverse is the imagination or science fiction from the past. So in 1992, Neil Stephenson wrote the book Snow Crash, which actually used the word metaverse in it. And that metaverse was filled with avatars. So uh, this is just to let you know that science fiction and imagining how people might live and communicate um, more deeply in their heads, where imaginations collaborate and collide, is has been in human thought for a while. All right, so I'm going to do something a little bit different here. Okay, y'all aren't seeing, yeah, you're seeing this. Okay. Um, so these are IRL shoes, in real life shoes. Okay. My son went off to college this year and I asked him to pack for college, and this is what he came downstairs with: a suitcase filled with shoes. Okay. Um, he doesn't need all of these shoes, but they represent who he is. Um, so you can imagine in the virtual world, in the metaverse, an avatar. This is my friend Kadeen James, and she is wearing clothing that was made specifically for her in the metaverse, because she, just like my son, doesn't want to wear canned clothing like me, who's currently stuck underwater, not moving, in one of the 4 outfits that I could choose in the Animes app. She wants custom clothing, just like my son wanted custom clothing. So in the metaverse, like I said, everything in the real world will be recreated in the virtual world. So here's Gucci creating shoes that you cannot wear in the real world, but your avatar can wear in the virtual world. And you can see that they also have an augmented version that is an overlay of reality, of virtuality onto reality. Um, so this is just a great analogy to think through when you're thinking about everything in the real world will be created in the virtual world. All right, I'm not going to go too much into the fashion component uh, of the virtual world, but fashion is one of the first real excitement. So fashion is one of the exciting areas for virtual avatars, etc., because it's a form of self-expression. Think about yourself every day when you get dressed. you put on clothing that is meant to symbolize who you are, express yourself, express your emotion, express your feeling, maybe flex, maybe show off something special that you have, show what tribe or group you're a part of. And we do the same in the metaverse. Um, Here is an example of the metaverse coming to the fore with this new it's a it's a reality show where the singer is real, but only their avatar performs for the audience, because usually there's a story behind what causes them to be nervous or scared about being IRL. So they're being meta, instead, to overcome certain parts of their history or their physicality or even their looks, etc. So those are just meant to be samples of what the real world and the virtual world, how they are mirrored. And the important thing to do is to think about the representation or connection between the real and the virtual. I'm going to jump to this slide here. So Web 1.0 connected us to information. Web 2.0, which is where we're at right now, connects us to each other. Web 3.0 is expected to connect people, places, and things, whole worlds. And so we're moving to Web 3.0. So you'll hear a lot about that. The pillars of the metaverse or Web 3.0 are these four important technologies: blockchain and digital ledger technology, which we can talk about in the panel, which gets into the ownership of digital things; augmented and virtual reality. So virtual reality I've shown you a lot of, and augmented reality is basically the metaverse overlaid onto the real world, or the virtual overlaid onto the real world. Artificial intelligence, there's too much cognition to handle the metaverse without artificial intelligence of the things and of processes. So this is an important component. And advanced data management. So things to think about for the metaverse. The metaverse is happening because it's a nexus of many evolutions, just like I just mentioned there. It's a slow process, but as some people say, the pandemic poured gasoline on our digital transformation, and so that's one of the components among better hardware for virtual reality, more compute power in artificial intelligence, etc. The other interesting thing is that our toys become tools. So games become things that we use for serious collaboration and communication, and uh, and play and all sorts of new productivity. And so it's important to think about toys becoming tools. Digital assets, like I showed you with the shoes and etc., open up an entire new world that we can talk about also. This is an era of remixing, recombining, taking all sorts of different technologies and art and remixing them and trying to see what new things we can come up with. And it's important to challenge assumptions. the assumption that a person needs to look like a person, the assumption that you can't have a meeting underwater. Um, way more than that, but always challenge assumptions when you're looking at these new technologies. But most important, and the thing that I think we'll discuss a lot today, especially given who's on the panel and given Ali's background, are uh, this sort of 7 rules of the metaverse by Tony Parisi, um, who has thought about the metaverse for over 20 years. And I think that all of these are incredibly important uh, standards to think about. So there is only one metaverse. You know, a lot of people talk about the metaverse and virtual reality and virtual worlds, but or Facebook, etc. But the metaverse must be one thing with the verses all connected. The metaverse is for everyone. If it's exclusionary, then it's just, again, like the real world. If the metaverse needs to be for everybody. Nobody controls the metaverse, including Facebook. And I think we will start to see that they will be forced to be open with open standards in order for them to continue to play in that space. The metaverse is open. It's open for people to build. It's open for people to join. It's open for collaboration, for uh, all sorts of engagement. Um, yeah. The metaverse is hardware independent. You don't have to have a virtual reality headset to participate in the metaverse. You obviously will have to have some kind of internet and some kind of device, but if the metaverse requires equipment that's too high end or connections that are too high end, then we break rule number 2, which is the metaverse is for everyone. The metaverse is a network where peer-to-peer connections throughout. Um, and the metaverse is basically the internet or a next iteration. And how we build it and who builds it is really important. We've learned from our past that we have to be incredibly intentional about how we build and who gets to build. And I think that's a lot of what we will discuss today. So I just want to leave you all with those rules and then get into some discussion. So I think we're going to have a small break right now, and then we're going to start the panel and answer your questions.
All right, everyone, we are ready for our panel discussion about the metaverse. Elizabeth, thank you so much for giving us a brief history, super fascinating, and a nice little insight so we can really jump off into this panel discussion about the metaverse. Joining us now for the panel, of course, we have Elizabeth. We also have Georgios Yanakakis. We have Kimberly Vall. We have Kobe Van de Weer, who is a student at DIE, and we also have Leonard de Rook, who is another student at DIE. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello,
All
hello.
right. So I think it is only fitting for our first question about the metaverse. I know, Elizabeth, you covered it quite a bit during your presentation, but I'm wondering maybe if we have any additional insights for this one. So we actually, and to start, we have a question submitted by our academic director. Rick, if you are watching, Master Chief, this question is for and by you. So this question reads, in the description of the Game for Thought stream, you almost imply that the metaverse will be a VR environment. To my experience, nobody for sure knows exactly what the metaverse will be. The only thing I learned is that everyone is almost sure of it, that it will be a 3D environment. What exactly is the metaverse, and are companies that are grasping onto this, are they all on the same page regarding what the essential concept of the metaverse is? I know, Elizabeth, you covered this a bit, but maybe some additional insights there would be interesting.
Well, what I would definitely add to this is that it's just, well, the first thing that comes to mind for me is that it's a combination of multiple elements in technology, including virtual reality, actual reality, augmented reality, name it. It's just, yeah, a lot of communication within a digital universe, I would say. That's like a big part of it.
Okay. Interesting addition, Kobe. Anyone else would like
Thank
to
you.
add anything? So what I hear is that virtual reality can be part of it, but it is not in essence virtual reality, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
would just add. Oh, sorry, could we go ahead?
No, no, go ahead, go ahead.
I would just add that, yeah, I think, building off of Elizabeth's great definition at the beginning, the key pieces are that these are persistent, cross-functional online spaces at scale. And I think commonly we're going to interact with them via VR, AR type technology, or XR more generally. But I think really any technology that's enabling us to access these digital spaces is going to be considered metaversal, whether it's avatars or other ways to represent ourselves. Those are going to be important. And we're going to have to think through a lens of accessibility as well. So accessibility not just to the technology, but to ourselves as humans, and this sometimes limitations that we have with being able to use such technology that is strictly vision based or auditory based, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera. But I think those core ingredients are what really matter, and we're going to be exploring and trying to understand how best we interface with this environment. Another theme that I think is relevant to bring up too is this notion that we often hear talked about of embodiment. We are in many ways, these technologies are transportative in nature, in that they are taking us into these spaces. They are mediating those experiences as if we were extending into these spaces, much as we do in non-digital worlds. And so I think technology that further enables that, which right now is largely VR, AR, is going to be a key piece.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great addition, Kimberly. Thank you. So it seems like one of those misconceptions at this point is that VR and the metaverse are interchangeable, which seems not to essentially be the case.
They're important, but
Yeah.
yeah, not interchangeable, I would say.
Okay. Sure. Any other additions? Any other comments? All right. So I know, Kimberly, you touched a little bit about accessibility in the metaverse. Definitely a very important topic, I think, and one that is of great interest to anyone that is doing research or even just interested in this domain. We'll get to that a little bit later. But first, so I mentioned debunking myths about the metaverse. We mentioned that, okay, VR, maybe that is a myth or a misconception that VR is the metaverse. are there any other misconceptions that you've heard of or experienced that you think should and can be debunked about the metaverse?
Shall I be a bit provocative here? That metaverse is something new. All of a sudden, we realize that there's a metaverse, while, as Elizabeth put it very correctly, we have been living in the metaverse for the last 30 years through games. I mean, we have experiencing a baby metaverse already. So I think that largely speaking, it's a rebranding of what we have seen with improved already, and we experience in common worlds where we can connect with people, have shared experiences, and so on through games like SimCity, Doom back in the days, and nowadays StarCraft and so on. But rebranded with better technology, better artificial intelligence, and higher degrees of accessibility. I agree. So we reach a point where technology maybe is a key enabler for reaching that sort of new metaverse. We have it already, though, right? I mean, it's nothing new. It's like it's evolution of metaverses over the years.
Okay. So, Georgios, in your opinion, then, it is a misconception that this is something new. This is something brand new, and rather it's something maybe that's recently been being paid a lot of attention in the media, but really it sounds like it's something that we have had and maybe has shown its face in different ways over the past, as Elizabeth said, 30 years or so. But now it's showing a new face, and so that's what people are getting really excited about.
It's a cool name, though. Like, it could be the third life, but it's a cool name. As much as deep learning is a cool name for machine learning. I mean, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I have to be very transparent. When we were brainstorming ideas for this season of Game for Thought, the metaverse came up really quickly. I had no idea what the metaverse was. And then as soon as it was explained to me, then I understood what, in essence, the concept is, but I had never heard that terminology before. I'm no expert in this topic at all, but I think exactly it's that like hot button name that really gets people excited about this. What we've actually maybe had for quite some time.
I think it's really important to recognize that history as well too. What we're seeing now is kind of an inflection point where the metaverse is being taken up into the cultural zeitgeist, and it's generating a lot of momentum, but it's also generating a lot of misconceptions around ownership of what we're associating the concept of the metaverse with. And there's certain companies that are propagating this idea. And the reality is this has existed in a multitude of forms. And as Elizabeth called out at the beginning, like this is supposed to be an open space that has certain definitional qualities that are the antithesis of which is being owned by a single corporation. So immersing ourselves in that history is a key space, or key piece of this. And I think one of the other things that is coming with this resurgence, if you will, or this gaining momentum, maybe better said, is the presence of a digital economy too, and the implications of that. We are now able to take things between spaces in meaningful ways. And I know we're going to talk a little bit later about non-fungible tokens, but this idea of persistence and unique items and the ability to represent in a meaningful sense our own identity and craft who we are in these online spaces, that technology is gaining in leaps and bounds, as is the capability to support us at scale. So there's a lot of technological reasons why this is bubbling up, but I think it's very important to recognize that this is a much broader reaching, has much deeper sociological implications than just the couple companies that have really been talking about it in the media lately.
Yeah, great points, Kimberly. Great points. Anyone else would like to add anything?
No, that was really
All
useful.
right. Actually, so I'm going a little bit out of order here. But it's okay. Hey, anything can happen on a Game for Thought stream about the metaverse. So, Kimberly, you mentioned the idea that the metaverse, and also Elizabeth, you mentioned the metaverse should be for everyone. That was one of the 7 pillars of the metaverse itself. If it is and is supposed to be open for everyone, One of the questions that one of our students actually submitted was about privatization of the metaverse. Could you share a little bit more about that? And maybe, the threats of this being something that is privatized and actually not only one open source for everyone.
Well, I would like to, I think Kimberly touched on the reason why the, ownership and digital economy and, matters is that we're moving to a decentralized, you know, um, way of existing online. We've been in a platform economy, meaning we go to Facebook or we go to Google. So those are centralized platforms that we go to, and it is the decentralized technologies, including blockchain, that are allowing for moving to something where we don't have to go to some centralized ownerships, island in order to be in the metaverse. And we're in transition to that, and that's why the NFT, the non-fungible token, is the word of the year. I'm pretty sure metaverse will be the word of the year next year. but so the they both sound so frothy and so hyped and so silly, but they have really deep philosophical implications. Because again, I always go back to thinking about the real world. You are able to walk around and go from store to store or country to country, owning your own things, being your own person. And you should be able to do that in the metaverse. So it's always good to look at the real world and think about things that you're able to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great points. Would anyone else like to add anything? I do have a question. So we did discuss a little bit earlier that, and Georgios, you mentioned this, that this is something that has existed for quite some time. And now that it's showing maybe a new face, it's getting a lot of attention on social media with Facebook's rebranding, which we will also, I'm sure, get to in just a bit. I received a question in advance about really the implications or indications that the metaverse will actually be something that people buy into and that people are actually really interested in adopting, both on the individual level and also the company level. And I'm thinking that this has been around for a while, but this new rebranding of it, it's kind of really emphasizing, okay, you're going to have this avatar that you will be able to interact with other people through a VR headset. What are the indications, do you think, of people using the metaverse and actually adopting it to a greater extent than, say, Second Life or something that again has been a different kind of metaverse situation in the past? Do you think people will actually adopt it? And if so, what do you think the time frame is? Are we too soon to know?
Well, in my opinion, I think Facebook is going to, or Meta is going to play a big role here as well. Like a lot of companies are, obviously, but I think in this field, Facebook is probably going to be one of the first giants to take the first steps into more of the metaverse. So, and what we have seen in the past and in the future, we'll see it as well, is that companies follow the giants. They want to follow the new trends. They want to follow what's new. They want to try it, maybe improve it, and then probably Facebook will buy it again if it's better. But I think it will only, yeah, I think we just need a giant or a couple of giants to make some big steps, and I think the rest will follow. So,
Interesting point. Has it happened, I wonder, then, following that point, has it happened in the past that a tech giant or maybe something similar to Facebook, has
yeah,
any company like that jumped on this kind of technique in the past?
it Yeah, it's in little things as well, right? I think Snapchat was, for instance, the first social media that had like stories that you could see for 24 hours. And I think in 2 months' time, we saw it everywhere. We saw it on Instagram, then it was implemented in Facebook itself, then it was on Messenger. Well, it's everywhere now.
Mm.
It's yeah, those things.
To add something a little different, talking about the mm, large corporations taking steps into the metaverse and why will it matter, et cetera. Um, Sticking with my shoe analogy, it's funny. I mean, think about shoes. Shoes are very, very important. Um, and shoes are very functional, but they're also very symbolic and um, who you are. And so we heard yesterday that Nike bought Artifact Studio. Artifact Studio only makes virtual sneakers. So if that's any indication that large corporations are seeing the metaverse as being important, that would be a good step. Um, I think that Facebook is such a huge. I mean, they own Oculus. They
Right.
the headset. They are, an incredibly controversial platform at the moment. And how they proceed, if they are the ones who own the metaverse, then it's not the metaverse. If we go back to the 10 rules of the metaverse, so how we navigate that is why things like games for thought exist and things
Right.
like fair play exist.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Great point, Georgios. I think I saw that you wanted to add something.
Sure, I can always add things. I'm an academic as well.
Great.
So basically, what I want to say is that we can, yeah, definitely giants like Facebook can lead the way, but we have examples from the past from games development, and obviously I represent games here and artificial intelligence, and I feel that game technology plays a central role in whatever we are seeing in the future, in the sense that we might see a new Unity engine, a new Unreal engine that is so much easier to create metaverses environments, and you can easily plug in your avatar. Uh, and it might be much easier to integrate with existing VR headsets or AR technology that might exist in the future. And then you have social media like Facebook that can sort of host all this sort of activity. I think game engines have been, Unity and Unreal have been a massive breakthrough in how we create simulated worlds. We didn't have those engines back in Second Life. That's why Second Life was like, an instance. But from Unity onwards, we have a game engine through which everyone more or less can create entire new worlds. So we democratized game design and game development. And I think the moment we actually democratize metaverse design, then we might see a breakthrough. So I believe in top-down creation of metaverse, but I also believe in bottom-up co-creation of all of us, like in a Minecraft fashion, that we all create parts of this world. And this is where blockchain comes into the play as, as a principle of democratization.
Right.
That's what I
Right.
think.
Okay. Great points.
And to just to follow on with that excellent description, in the lecture series that I curated, I had one amazing speaker, Shaw Waters, who works for the XR Foundation, that is creating things like Unity and Unreal with a blockchain-based back end that will be easy for people to create their own metaverse. Because if you only allow extremely highly skilled, Unreal developers to create the metaverse, then we're SOL. So there's a lot of people, and they're kind of like the Electronic Frontier Foundation and other foundations that worked back in when the internet was getting started to try to create a fair and equitable and sustainable and accessible internet or web 3.0. So it's very interesting to see these bottom up collaborations, and then you get into these really interesting ways that people are collaborating through decentralized autonomous organizations that are that everybody wins by building and collaborating together. And we're at the very nascent stage of that.
And so I think you speak to accessibility, obviously, in terms of building what actually we are calling the metaverse. I want to also flip that coin and take a look at the accessibility of taking part in the metaverse, not so much building it, but also taking part in it. Elizabeth, you also mentioned earlier that you don't need to have an Oculus headset. You don't need to have a VR headset in order to take part in the metaverse. I'm wondering if you could elaborate more on this, or any, of course, of our other panelists. Do you fear, though, that the metaverse, though, will quickly turn into something that the VR elements are very popular, and some people cannot afford this equipment? Do you envision any gatekeeping there?
I have some personal experience, but I know Kimberly probably really speaks on this deeply. I don't know if you had something to say, Kimberly.
Oh, sure. You're welcome to go first, though.
Well, I just was going to say, I taught, I did some experimentation in a class, like, and we were trying to do VR in the classroom, and doing very simple things like Mozilla Hubs and these free softwares. But we had two rules, which is all students needed to be able to access it and to participate in that, and so it had to be web VR. So I think we're seeing a lot of what's called web VR, which means you have a browser and it could be on a smartphone, and then you are able to participate. So those were my experiences, and we're not there yet, but we're getting there. But I'd really love to hear what Kimberly has to say.
No, I love that. I think that's such an important foundation. I mean, anytime something gains momentum, there is significant risk that we're leaving others behind. And I think on the positive side, we've got with the metaverse the potential to, as Georgia's already brought up, like democratize technology and democratize digital spaces in a way that we haven't really seen before, and I think the benefit of that is an oversimplification, but a bigger market's going to drive prices down and enable technology to spread more broadly to households and schools and individuals that may otherwise not have had access. And technologically mediated experiences can help us overcome challenges that we may face physically or mentally, as Elizabeth mentioned in her talk as well, which opens further doors. So all of that is really great and really exciting, and one of the reasons we should be excited about the metaverse. But I think there's still a huge technology divide, and I think that we risk widening those divides as we get caught up in this momentum of what's happening. We're all right here in this like literal experience that we're all having right now on shared via Twitch because we arguably have reasonably comfortable access to technology. I mean, maybe not as much as you might want, but compared to many, we certainly have a pretty good setup. And I think it's very easy to look ahead through those digital goggles and stop seeing those who aren't also looking through those same goggles. We're just
Right.
staring into the metaverse and not seeing everyone that we've left behind. And the metaverse is kind of the perfect example of that because it is literally supplanting our reality with a different reality and making it possible to omit those folks who are left behind. So I think aspects of inclusivity, diversity, equity, and inclusivity more generally, we know that content at scale needs more facilitation. It needs support. As humans, we don't do very well at scale. And I think that online spaces often push us to our limits, putting us together with strangers with whom we may not have a foundation of trust, which can lead to further breakdowns in communication. And that's when we start to see the actual cohesiveness of the online communities that we're building break down, and we see a lot of the challenges. But it also means we have to take care in recognizing underrepresented voices and lifting them up and making sure that we are creating equitable access to the technology, not just because this is what's popular right now, but asking the hard questions of what barriers are we putting up? Are we gatekeeping, as you said at the beginning, and making sure we're staying vigilant to that end. I think we really need to take a mindset of core societal infrastructure when we are thinking about the metaverse and what that means for accessibility at that societal level.
Sure. So building off of that, I also think about accessibility, of course, in terms of if you do have access to these kinds of technologies. It's great to hear that, okay, there are these metaverses that do not require Oculus goggles, because not all of us can afford very expensive VR technology. I also wonder if any of you might have any insights about accessibility in terms of visual impairments or hearing impairments, what that might look like in the metaverse as compared to in our everyday life, or for example, our everyday life as students or staff members on Microsoft Teams. Does it look any different in terms of accessibility within the metaverse? Elizabeth, I think you were gonna. Oh, okay.
Yeah, well,
There you
I can just say, uh, again, just like we do in the real world, we have to set up the on ramps and the pathways for people of varying abilities. One really funny example in my lecture series was Ben Kaczynski, who did a really good history of the metaverse, if you want to see a good one. And he talked about Google Glass, and he was trying out Google Glass, but the screen is always on the right eye, and he is completely blind in his right eye. And they only made right eye versions of the Google Glass. So, we're going to constantly run into that kind of thing. You know, we'll have to, we'll have to, build for a variety of people, and it'll be constantly evolving. And that's why it's important to have a variety of people participating in the build and the consumption, if that's the right word,
right.
because they will be able to build for people who have similar abilities or disabilities or whatever it might be. So
Sure.
I was laughing at that anecdote because I am blind in my left eye, and I had a great experience at a VR conference once where they were demoing some eye tracking technology, but it was a prototype, and they only tracked the left eye. My left eye is just useless, and so I sent them into a scramble trying to figure out why it wasn't working until I casually mentioned, "Could it be because I'm blind in my left eye?"
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's the challenge too. Like in the games industry, as with many industries, so much of it is driven by demographics and percentages. And when we view our world through the lens of percentages, it means we overvalue majorities in ways, and we build up the structures with which we produce games and everything else in that surrounding ecosystem to reflect those majority percentages. And that's not to devalue those who fall into the underrepresented groups. It's just to say that we have to be more intentional in investing. And that means we also need to support as well. Like there needs to be greater funding opportunities and external forces that are applying pressure to say, hey, you need to be including these groups as well. It's not okay to just say, well, 80% of our players are X, and so therefore we target that. I think when we're thinking through the context of that societal infrastructure, of the metaverse, we need to do better. Like we just have to be intentionally focusing and putting effort toward those ends.
So for me, again, it seems like we already tackle and are confronted with these topics of accessibility in real life every day. And so again, it's just dealing with these topics within the metaverse. It's getting a new face essentially, but we're already confronted with these topics in other domains. But since the metaverse is somewhat a new domain for a lot of the people who are students or working or what have you, it's also something that we need to take into consideration because it's equally as valid as the other domains of our lives. So stepping a little bit away from the accessibility conversation, I keep looking towards my laptop, but it's only because I see a lot of great questions coming in. We will move on to the audience Q&A in around 10 or so minutes, so hang tight. I just want to remind you, though, if you do have any questions for our lovely panel members about the metaverse, send them in the chat. Just make sure you put a Q beforehand so we know exactly that you would like to ask the panel members a question. The next question, actually, it was not pre-submitted to me, but it's Leonard and Kobe. I see you two on the screen as students during also. So Leonard, you are a second year.
No,
And
yeah, I'm. It's my second year in the IA. So.
yes, and Kobe first.
Yeah, first.
Okay,
fresh.
so because you are first and second years, you basically your university experience has been during the Corona times.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if your experiences during this your like Corona university experience, your social relationships with other people, how
definitely.
has that looked like? And based off that, because we are obviously made to be a lot more flexible now. If we want to have meetings on Microsoft Teams, for example, we can easily do that. But that also has changed, I think, our social relationships with other people and our understandings of being with each other. So, yeah, I'm just wondering if you have any reflections on being a student during the Corona pandemic. And off of that, also, if you have any thoughts about what that might have to do with the metaverse.
Yeah. What I definitely can say is that the real world is like it's more convincing, more emotional, more satisfying in so many ways, both good and bad ways. But I think that's at least for now. Who knows what the future brings? But like right now, I imagine it's the same as this: going on VR chat with someone and you rant about your day, like to your buddy, and then at the end of your rant, he virtually taps your shoulder. Right? That's not the same as visiting him, ranting, and then afterwards getting a hug from him. That skin to skin contact is not the same. But if I don't know if anyone followed this, but like I think 10 days ago or so, Elon Musk announced his new neuron chip that you can put in your head, which basically controls like it's able to monitor every single movement you can make. And I think if we're working with technology like this, and then you would be able to combine it with the metaverse, which also like it combines your actual neurons and feelings towards it. I think that would be kind of scary. It's like a Black Mirror episode, but I think it has a lot of potential. Yeah.
So you, Kobe, do envision some violations there, or maybe the online metaverse interactions with other people. Also, it's not the same as in person.
Right now, I would say no, definitely not. No.
Okay. And do you
No,
think,
not
just a
right
follow-up question quickly, Leonard as well, do you think the pandemic has made you think about the metaverse more? Because you both are very interested in virtual reality. Did it kind of like catalyze an interest in this for you?
Yeah, I bought my VR glasses in the pandemic because I saw people playing like games and all, and like seeing each other like and like character from. I was like, oh yeah, I want to do this as well. So I was searching on the web, and then I came across the Oculus, and it was like nicely priced. It was not like an Steam VR who's like $1,000 for a student as me. I was like, I'm gonna wait, and then I saw like an goodly priced model, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna try it out and like see what, and then like I started it up. Came in like a big room. I could look at mountains, which you cannot do in Belgium. So we
You
have that
can't.
one.
I can affirm that.
Ah,
Unless you're
yeah,
in the south. Unless you're in the south.
yeah, and that was like a great experience. And also, like, I have friends from Holland and from America, so seeing them just sitting in front of you and just talk to them like over in a just sitting there talking to them is such a weird feeling. But like with the neuron chip where Kobe was talking about, it would be so much weirder because you still think in your head, oh yeah, it's fake, so nothing will happen. I'm a bit scared of that because yeah, it's still like technology, so still real life and technology. I think it needs to be separate, but like not that far. But
So
yeah,
for you, there are certain boundaries that you would
yeah,
prefer to be drawn in order for you
yes,
to feel comfortable.
yeah,
Mm.
It can get
Okay.
really creepy though. If you see like
yeah,
Nvidia is doing the real time rendering now with like models that are just as sharp as real life. Like I'm just imagining like all these technologies combining. That would be absolutely insane if something
Mm-hmm.
comes out of this. Yeah.
Right. And
uh,
Leonard, go ahead.
yeah. Like, but also, if you can also think of like a good way because I was like working and like a person with a big disability was like really interested. So I put a VR glasses on him, and he was like, "Oh, like in a world where things change," and he could walk in it with his like the joysticks, and he
Mm.
was like, "Oh shit!" And he started to crying, and like that's also a good
Wow.
part. So people in the real world can like do things they can't do there. So I
Right.
like that a lot.
Yeah, that's a super great point, actually, because I think when we talk about, and actually in this conversation so far, talking about accessibility, we are kind of focusing on the needs that this metaverse really needs to subscribe to in order for it to be accessible for everyone. But also on the flip side, uh, these kinds of virtual experiences, they do offer yeah, experiences that otherwise in reality maybe wouldn't be able to be the case.
Yeah.
Just one more follow-up questions for Leonard and Kobe. As students at Digital Arts and Entertainment, um, I'm wondering what you might think of like a virtual classroom environment in which Leonard, you actually submitted this question, uh,
Oh yeah.
in which you could see each other's avatars and you could really interact with them within a classroom virtual environment. What are your thoughts on that, and how might that compare with a physical in-person lesson?
Oh yeah. Um, what it compares to physical lesson, I don't think it would change that much. Just like interactions with like touches and all, like, but like, I would like it so much more. Like now, especially with the pandemic, if people are in quarantine but they're not sick, they need to stay home and still like follow the classes online. But if you go to the metaverse and sit in a class with everyone, but you're just at home, so that's like a big changer, I think. Instead of teams, go to the metaverse and see each other sitting, working on it, and then like yeah, it's better. It's better than online class. But I would
Okay.
still prefer physical class. But that's
Exactly.
me.
Okay. So you would prefer physical class. However, this metaverse
Yeah,
class concept, it's more interactive, more engaging than the online classes that you're
yeah,
accustomed to now.
yeah, because you
Okay.
can just like see around and like also chat with some people sitting around like it would be in the real life class.
Sure.
So
Sure. Kobe, thoughts on that one?
Yeah. Yeah, it has. I'm just like imagining different ways you could be in a 3D classroom, right? It's would you actually be wearing glasses, or is it like hologram wise, or is it like just tracking your face and like pasting it onto a 3D model, or is it actually like a full bodysuit tracking thing? I think those things would like make a huge difference, though, right?
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
Um, but yeah, if it would be like lag free, like stable and everything, I think for some parts, if it like if it's a 1 hour theory lesson, then I would maybe prefer just going into the metaverse for an hour than having to bike or take the bus to school for that hour of theory,
Right.
theory lesson. Yeah.
So
Also,
again,
if
going
yeah,
back, go ahead, Kobe. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, sorry. Just for this example, imagine you have to wear VR glasses, right? Um, well, if it's actually a class, then you still have to take your notes. So how do you take notes while having that headset on as well? Like those things are kind of tricky,
That's
I
a
think.
great point. And I think also, I don't know if Kimberly, Elizabeth, Georgia, so you would agree. It also points to, okay, the metaverse has a significant history, but not all of this is figured out yet. And there are a lot of question marks. So, Kobe, as just as you say, you don't actually know exactly what this classroom metaverse experience might actually look like.
I was just going to add on to that. Having so as a person who teaches students like you all, I have there's pros for being in person, but there's also pros for being online that I have discovered. Case in point is what we're doing right here. This would completely not be possible if we were just purely IRL. And I think the pandemic sort of pushed us to the place where this is a totally acceptable thing to do for school or for a side, extracurricular, what have you. Um, so, but yes, I think that and just like Kobe was saying that he preferred in real life experiences. I don't think that we have to totally be IRL or I mean totally be online or totally be um, in real life. I mean, obviously we have to be in real life, but there are things that are better in some cases and than others, and we will continue to live in the real world, but there might be new ways of enhancing communication and collaboration and life experiences. Again, to Leonard's point, there are people who are in the hospital that can't get out of their room for months on end, and VR headsets are amazing for those people.
Mm-hmm.
So, so this is where being super intentional about what the human experience is and what a learning experience is and what engagement is where we're all at right now.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
for so long, I think we've had to fit ourselves to the technology because of the technological limits, but we've kind of inverted that relationship today. And so that's enabling us to ask really important questions like, what does it mean to actually be together? For Kobe and Leonard's points, like what are those key salient elements that we need to be human? What does it actually mean to be human and exist in a space? And how are we bringing that to our digital experiences? And I think those are some of the most crucial fundamental questions that technology should be supporting us in answering, not answering for us. We're the humans in this equation, and so we need to be driving.
Right. Such a great addition, Kimberly. And Elizabeth, thank
Just
you.
to,
Yeah, go ahead, Georgios.
to add on that, yeah, on the positive, think about the metaverse in a more positive manner. Again, coming from the games world, I think if you look at the games as the part of metaverse, then already you're looking at the medium that half of the Earth's population is engaged already on a daily basis. So if you think about it, I mean, when we talk about accessibility, and yes, it's not the entire Earth, but half half of us actually play games on a daily basis. So it's quite broad. Um, so if you think about it as an experiment of human behavior, human experience, human emotion, it's a really massive scale experiment. What is going on, now? The data that we leave, the traces of what we do, it's there, and we can analyze it. We can understand more about how we interact with each other through a virtual medium, how we behave in certain circumstances in such a massive scale. This is amazing if you think about it. And we have the data. Obviously, there are privacy issues. We need to talk about them at some point.
Mm-hmm.
The European Commission is taking really good steps forward in protecting data from users when it comes to their profiling, when it comes to their interaction with social media such as Facebook, regularizing artificial intelligence. So I think we are really faced with new challenges when it comes to technology, but also opportunities. It has always been like that, right? When new technologies have been introduced to humanity. So yes, VR is there for the last 20 plus years. It hasn't been largely adopted because
Mm-hmm.
of certain sort of limitations of hardware, software limitations. We're getting there. Who knows if we're going to wear sort of headsets or something else in the future? Maybe a headset doesn't make any sense. But currently, they're still not largely adopted. It's because of the technology itself, but it's also because of us. We're a bit hesitant still. COVID obviously was a booster
Right.
towards that end.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and nowadays we can not only look at, there are certain things like bullying, cyberbullying, toxicity in games that we can detect through all this data.
Mm-hmm.
And while, you know, as scientists and data scientists, we might be viewed as people, the evil people or Facebook is the evil corporation that sort of stores all this data. Uh, Maybe one way to look at it is, well, there's opportunity to actually understand toxic behavior and eliminate it if possible. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Great additions. Great additions. Thank you so much. I'm looking at the time now and I'm saying, oh my gosh, let's get to the audience Q&A. There are a lot of questions. So I see one question in particular, which is really interesting, again, about VR. So Sarah Markowicz asks, when I researched virtual reality 2 years ago at DIE and beyond, it was really hard to find students and others who used VR, who wanted to use VR, and who enjoyed using VR. I found only truly avid users. If game developers find the VR experience less than enticing, how will the metaverse ever attract any sort of beyond niche audience? Would anyone like to tackle that one? So basically, in essence, what are the real indications here that the metaverse and VR will transcend a niche audience of people who enjoy using VR?
I think that's such an important question because so much of adoption is whether or not we can bring this into our day-to-day lives in a meaningful way. Is it solving problems that we actually have, or is it otherwise presenting an experience that is attractive enough to overcome those hurdles? And I would say, arguably, for VR technology, that hasn't largely been true for many people, either because of the price point, as was already mentioned earlier, or just the discomfort, or other reasons there. But I think that's also why it's really important that we're not equating VR and AR with the metaverse. And as Giorgio just said, like it could take all sorts of different forms. So I think the metaverse itself, and we discussed some of these themes a little bit earlier, it has its own momentum and its own drivers. VR is one of the mediating tools through which we can access what is becoming the metaverse, if you will. But I think there are other means, and when we look at the themes in gaming and social media and the investments that we're seeing towards this interoperable future, these are things that are happening irrespective, not necessarily irrespective, but separately from VR and AR. And so I think that momentum, that independent momentum, is really important to give a signal that this has the ability to gain greater traction. And then we're also seeing greater investments in VR and AR. I mean, it's been very up and down. I've been very active in the VR industry over the years, not as much recently, but I think we had a real sort of initial resurgence, re-renaissance, if you will, and we saw that fall back from that initial excitement as it's gained traction in other markets, not just with gaming. And we're seeing now some significant technological breakthroughs that I think are going to enable this to open up the market as well. And so those things coming together, as well as what we're seeing with blockchain, NFTs, et cetera, I think those are the things, some of the signals and the various revenue streams that are starting to emerge that give us a sense of this really could stand to really turn into something in the future.
Great input. You mentioned revenue streams. I think that is a topic that we would be really remiss not to discuss during this panel about the metaverse. So I'm hearing so many comments about NFTs, a lot of things about blockchain technology. have to be completely transparent. I am not well versed in these topics, so I'd really love to hear some more about blockchain, about NFTs, and how that takes shape when we're talking about the metaverse.
So I'm happy to start on that. Just like in the real world, look around where you are right now. And there's a lot of things in your house and home that you own. And the way that I liken it is that when I did the Web 1.0, Web 2.0, Web 3.0, the Web 1.0 and 2.0, information is free, and or the way that we trade information is by making a copy of it. And that's great when we're sharing information, whether it's a music file or a image file or a pair of digital sneakers. But what happened is blockchain came along and figured out how to transfer money on the internet without making a copy of it. That's basically what blockchain allowed, was the ability to make it where when I give $10 to Allie, that the $10 goes away from me and to her. So that's what blockchain did. So now
$10 richer over here.
But now we can apply that to data. And so that is the trick that has happened. And that is the enthusiasm that we're seeing happen, because sharing information by making a copy of it is great for the consumer. It's terrible for the creator of the information. And right now, most of us create anything that you create that is a file, whether it's a music file or a JPEG or a movie file, is digital labor that took you to create it, whether it's an article. And if that's copyable, then you can only make money by the time that you make work for hire for the hours that you put in and not for the residuals. But now that we've figured out how to apply that blockchain technology to all files, be they 3D files or code or HTML files or doc files or JPEGs, now we can own things. Look around your house right now. You own things, even if it's a $5 coffee cup. It's still not free. Someone made it, and someone needs to be paid for that. And so there's a real difficult. So it's ownership within this world, and that's why, again, what Georgios was saying is that if you go from Fortnite and all the skins and all the things that you've made and dealt with that, but they kick you out because of whatever reason, you lose everything. But in the real world, you carry everything with you and it belongs in your wallet. And this gets into regular data as well. So your health data, your financial data, we're decentralizing that, so it's not held in a bank and it's not held on a platform, but you hold it and you carry it around with you. And that is a transition that we're making, I think.
That was, I think, the best explanation and the most clear. So thank you. Yeah, I've tried to look into this myself quite a few times, and I'm wondering also if there are any barriers or any potential problematic features of blockchain. If people are hesitant about this, why?
I mean, it's complicated, and all the tech bros are making all the money. I mean, to be honest. But this is another thing that needs to be democratized. I mean, the whole core of it is democratization, and yet again, we see that the most technologically affluent get in and take advantage, and that's why places like Fair Play and Games for Thought really matter, because there's lots of problems throughout all of this, and that's why everyone has to be involved.
And quickly, because I see a lot of interesting questions, but quickly, I also want to touch on cryptocurrency and the role of cryptocurrency and maybe how it overlaps with blockchain technology and these NFTs that we've been talking about.
I have a very simple explanation.
Okay, we love it. Give it to us.
Cryptocurrency is digital money. Okay? It's just digital money that originated digitally and stays digital. Blockchain technology is just a public ledger where we write down who the transactions that happen between people or between whatever. So if I give you $10, then the transaction is written in a public ledger that is accessible by everybody. So blockchain is just a public ledger.
Mm-hmm.
Cryptocurrency is just a digital currency. NFTs are just digital goods.
Right. Okay. So
That's
NFTs, digital goods, cryptocurrency, this is the digital money. And blockchain technology, this is basically records of
Exactly.
of the payment.
Of transactions.
Exactly. Okay.
That's it.
Very good to know. Stepping away from NFTs and cryptocurrency and blockchain, I do see a question in the chat from Kuhn. And Kuhn asks, are there any industry sectors that will be left behind in the dust by this? He gives buggy whip salesmen as an example, but I'm sure that, that there are a lot of other industries that also are implicated within this as well. So are there any industry sectors that might not benefit from this push towards the metaverse?
Well, I would maybe say like physical artists, and with that I mean painters who paint stuff only in real life and don't digitalize it, or people who make, in general, like statues, just physical art that's not really, that doesn't have a way to digitalize itself. Because I think more and more people will want to have these things online in the metaverse, because it's, look at the statue I have now in my, who knows what I'm talking about here, like a virtual house or something. I think these sectors might, not benefit from this, but in another way, if it is digitalizable, then the other way around, probably, yeah.
Yeah. On the flip side, you could also see that maybe there will be some flexibility there. Maybe there will be adoption of digitalization of these goods. Georgios, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to say that we can see it positively. Some of sculptures, artists that they work with tangible material, they might want to move on a digital on the digital sort of space, but the ones that they don't want to do that, they are still there, and they're still artists, and they have a niche area where people can still buy their sort of sculptures. So I think same applies with shoemakers these days, right? I mean, there are very few left, but they sell really expensive shoes. So same applies with AI and the sort of the fear, the AI fear that it's going to take over all our jobs. I think, and with every new technology, humans are a bit it's like phobias about technophobias basically, and obviously metaverse brings all of these phobias once more. But I think there will be a transition, a gradual transition towards new ways of approaching our jobs, our whatever we do, whatever creative we do. We might want to do it digitally. Architects might want to, instead of playing with our clay models, to gradually build more on, at least in the initial phases, to play more with digital sort of models in Unreal or in Unity, instead of playing with tangible material. So I think it's going to be a transition, a digital transformation of everyone, and the ways we interact with each other and the ways we interact with our creative processes, basically, large.
Right.
It will happen. It already happens.
Exactly. It seems like through your explanation right now, it seems like basically what you're describing is on a larger scale, a lot of the adaptation that we've already done due to the pandemic.
Exactly. And if you think about it, everything that is in this sort of like metaverse, the future metaverse that exists in there, is the real world, is a digital twin of the real world, as Elizabeth put it, plus more stuff, fantasy, right?
Right.
So
Plus
it's
more
far
stuff.
more
I
than,
like that.
it's like the Matrix, right?
Right.
The real world plus stuff, cool stuff, fantasy,
All right.
godlike stuff, whatever. So that's really cool. I mean, it opens up opportunities for expression, creative expression, entirely new buildings that we haven't seen before that they can just elevate, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
entirely new ways of being creative. Who knows? I mean, so it's a wonderful opportunity actually.
Right.
More, I mean, there's the phobia, but at the same time, it brings opportunities for expression, creativity, education, as we put it, culture, and so on.
Mm, right. Great point. This question I see, it's really interesting. It's a bit more technical. So I see that Wim asks, at the Liquid House, which is a company, we measure human interactions through games. Currently, we collect the data through playing games in the in-person world. That's how they collect their data. Transitioning these measurements to online environments shows lower connection levels. Are we really going to live happily with lower level connections? Or is this a Facebook dream? Does anyone have any input regarding that?
Georgios,
So,
go ahead. I saw you unmute.
data
Sure.
collection
Yeah, I
in
don't
the
know.
metaverse.
I was stalling for a minute. I don't know. Okay, so I can start. Thanks. Uh, no, we don't want that. We don't want people to be less connected. We want people to be more connected. And before the social media, we were connecting in different ways. And then Facebook came up and we were connecting through traditional ways and through Facebook. If you see young people nowadays, they connect through TikTok. I don't use TikTok, but people do, and they have different ways of connecting. That doesn't mean that they don't connect. They're happily doing it. So I don't know what they find in TikTok, but they do it. So they're happy. So as long as people are happy, they will be using technology. If they're not happy, they won't. So yeah, games. Some games are better than others, and some games connect people better than other games. And the same applies with the metaverse applications that we will experience. So maybe in that particular example, that transition didn't really work well. But I, I, I don't want us to be to generalize out of this one data point. Maybe some other instances can actually this transition might be more successful. So
Yeah, in our work in the Fair Play Alliance and with game development more generally, we're actually seeing extreme levels of connection these days. That gaming spaces in particular are heavily facilitating the social experiences of younger folks all the way through up to older folks. Obviously, COVID has accelerated a lot of that for people who might not otherwise have considered interacting via a game. It becomes a much more appealing, I think, alternative to the family Zoom chat again. So we're seeing a lot of people who are being drawn into the space and realizing that these are actually very rich social spaces. Now, there's certainly games that aren't necessarily social by nature, and I think there's always important questions around what does a healthy balance look like, and if you're spending 20 hours a day locked away behind a screen, then yes, there's probably some concerns there. But I think in the spirit of the beginning when we were talking about dispelling some of the myths, I think there has been a tendency for sometimes games to be represented as fundamentally antisocial when I think in fact they are fundamentally deeply social spaces, particularly today. And it's really more of a question of what, and I don't have the answer to this, but what does healthy look like? What does good look like, given that we now live in a hybridized digital, non-digital world, and part of our social lives now play out in the context of digital spaces and gaming in particular.
So connection doesn't necessarily then need to be lost. Actually, in fact,
No, I don't think so.
it could go the other direction.
We've seen evidence of it definitely being enhanced through COVID. I think the ability, I mean, it breaks down barriers, the ability to connect with people as we are. I mean, I'm in Canada, which is a little far away from Belgium, for example. So
We're
the
not
ability,
neighbors, just a little boat
basically,
ride away.
but the ability to do things like this and these opportunities, I mean, we can see the cost of not also having our non-digital experiences and ability to connect with others. When we have one at the expense of the other, I think that is deeply problematic. But I would say that digital experiences are really facilitating a lot of really great connections. So many that, a lot of the work that we do for the Fair Play Alliance is thinking not just in terms of moderation of spaces, but how do we, from a design methodological perspective, how do we approach the design of our spaces to facilitate healthier interactions, given that we're pulling people from all different walks of life and cultures and who may have never met, who are, being tossed into these experiences, and that can be challenging. So it's so connected. We need to invest more in having those connections go well.
Right, definitely. Great point. And just to add, this is actually the most international panel that we have had so far. So we have Kimberly, who's joining us from Canada. We have Elizabeth, who's joining us from Georgia in the United States. And then Georgios is joining us from Malta. I happen to be American, but we are, myself, Kobe, and Leonard are in Belgium. Just a side note. Cool international panel. I think we have time for 2 more questions or so. I see actually a really interesting question here that goes back to the discussion we had about accessibility. And Leonard, you mentioned it, that one of your friends had a really wonderful experience with VR, being able to do something that they weren't actually able to do in physical reality. This question goes, there are ethical issues with this, to giving someone the ability to walk in the metaverse who doesn't have that ability in real life. How do you feel after the euphoria then, when the metaverse environment is gone and you are back to real life? It, like everything, has its pluses and minuses.
I think you need, like, oh yeah, it's if I don't know, I don't know what it's not like to not walk. I don't know what it's like to not walk, but like the euphoria gets there. But I think if you like, me personally, I can set a boundary. This is VR. This is real life. But like, it can get harder for people who are like have disabilities or something.
Right. Could it be disappointing then, is her point, I guess, to then
Ah,
leave the metaverse and then not
maybe
not
no.
have that same experience anymore?
I think it's like, I think he wants to return to that feeling maybe more. But like the disappointment part, if he can set 2 groups from I can walk here but not in real life, is gonna be fine, I think. But not if he's like fully concentrated on the VR, then maybe can get disappointed. Yeah.
I think a pattern we're seeing a lot in these questions is finding a balance between the 2 realities that we're having.
Absolutely. And I think, Kimberly, would you like to add to that?
Oh, I was just really quickly going to add a point too, that one of the things that I think we need to be conscious of is that we're not, if you will, forcing these experiences, either, intentionally, we shouldn't be, of course, but unintentionally either, like implying that you're somehow lesser because, just since we're using the example of not being able to walk, that you need to be able to walk to be complete. And so therefore digital spaces enable that. So you should of course want this and you should be a part of this because then you'll be complete, so to speak. But that's not true. People are complete in all sorts of ways. And we
Right.
have all sorts of differences that make this, this very rich fabric of humanity. And so I think we have to be very careful that these can be very enabling experiences. They can be very exciting, but ultimately it's up to the individual involved whether or not they want to opt in or not. And we should be careful of the pressures that we may be inadvertently creating.
That's a great point about inadvertent pressures, because just like you say, if we are shining a light again actually on this ability to be able to walk, for example, in the metaverse, it does send kind of a message that you aren't complete if you don't have these, if you aren't able to have these experiences in the physical reality. So that's a really great point. I have one more question for you all, and then we will wrap it up. Everyone out there on Twitch, though, stay tuned after our last question. I'll give you some information about our next stream. But just one last question for Elizabeth, Georgios, Kimberly, Kobe, and Leonard. This is a really basic question, but I think it's a good one to end on. Why should we care about this? Why should I care about the metaverse? why should I even be tuning into this discussion? Or as a student, for example, Kobe or Leonard, why should I actually buy into this mentally? Or why not?
Well, I'll
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Kobe.
Go first.
No, because I know there's going to be some smart answers to this, but I just wanted to add like a first piece to this. I think we can start by saying that it won't be that long anymore before it's, in my opinion at least, before it's fully like immersed with the real world or real world economy for that sake. Um, but I think it's the same as we saw during COVID, like the possibilities it opened, just as we are doing this right now, like so international and still for people on the screen right next to each other. Um, it's revolutions like this, evolution, sorry, like this that just it changes so much, and I think people will be really shocked to see what else the future has to bring. Yeah, that
Great
was
points,
my
Kobe. Great
perspective.
points. And that is a smart answer, Kobe. Don't put yourself down. You
Thank
are
you.
on this panel. You are a great panelist. All right. Any other comments about why should we care? Why should I buy in?
From my perspective, I'm going to be super short here. From my perspective, I think it opens up opportunities for science, for scientific breakthroughs when it comes to social sciences, the humanities, the artificial intelligence technologies, immersive technologies, extended reality, and so on. But it also opens up our creative space, the possibility space of what we can do with our. It's like yet another extended reality of what we can do. The real world is not enough apparently. So, if we have an extended version of the world, then that might open up opportunities for better designs,
Right.
better
Right.
solutions to existing problems, and so on.
So common themes of opportunities and solutions I'm hearing so far. Elizabeth Kimberly Leonard.
Oh yeah. Okay, Elizabeth, you can go. Okay,
Thank you.
so I was like, maybe it's like also a stupid answer, but like I
No,
was thinking
no,
because
no
Kobe
stupid
said,
answers.
yeah, like you can like get a theory lesson for like 1 hour in your virtual room. So maybe like you don't need to take the car, and maybe like the expenses of the climate change will, I don't know, like you don't need to take the car. So a lot of people like stay home for like stupid things. Like I don't know. Maybe that's also a plus point.
So impacts beyond maybe our current understanding. Climate change, for
Yeah,
example. That's something I didn't personally think of.
No,
yeah.
that's true though, but well, I'm not sure if that would happen for the sake of this stream, but just imagine it on a bigger scale, a talk where six important people would be on a panel together and a big thing. Just already that those six people could be doing this from their home and not having to take a plane to all be at the same place, things like that, right? Or online events. If it's an event for 30,000 people normally, and you can do it for 100,000 online instead. First of all, more people can go to the event, and second of all, that's 30,000 people that didn't take a plane to that event. That does, yeah, have effects, right?
Right. So it might have climate effects in terms of climate change, but also it might have economical effects that maybe we also can't anticipate at the moment. Yeah, that's a great point, Kobe.
Yeah, I was just going to add. Yeah, I mean, it's actually common to discuss that VR as a replacement for transportation. That's a very, uh, so yes, I think that's super important. But again, you don't have to care about the metaverse, and you don't have to, participate. The things that are exciting are the things that we did talk about, and we talked about collaboration too, more efficient ways to collaborate, which is interesting. And I also think it's a far-fetched kind of viewpoint, is that it's us merging our heads and our brains and our thoughts together and our imaginations together. And that's what's so thrilling and exciting, is that we're in a headspace together. And so sharing your imagination is really fascinating. And that you don't have to do that, but it is exciting for me.
What an interesting take on that. Yeah,
Yeah.
sharing your Imagination collectively. Yeah, super fascinating. Kimberly, I give you the last word of the evening.
Oh gosh, such pressure. These are all amazing answers, so +1 to all of them. I would just add some further food for thought, which we should care about the metaverse, because if we don't, the companies and individuals who stand to make all the money will be the architects of our future. And this is our future, so we should be defining it together.
What an amazing end note. Seriously, I so appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time with us, Elizabeth, Georgios, Kimberly, Kobe, and Leonard. Really appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Beautiful insights. Really fascinating. I personally feel like I learned a lot in the past hour and 45 minutes now. Thank you so much to everyone in the chat also for sharing wonderful questions. This is one of the, I think, the most exciting question-wise on Twitch. So I really appreciate it there. I see a dog walking around. We have a dog here. Anyway, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Stay tuned, everyone, on Twitch just for another minute or so. I'll share some information about the podcast and also the next Game for Thought stream. Alrighty, panel members, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye from Belgium. Goodbye, goodbye. All right, everyone. Thank you so much once again for joining us here on Twitch for yet another Game for Thought panel about the metaverse. Thank you to all of our viewers out there. Thank you also to Master Chief Rick, who is our academic director, for making sure that that this Game for Thought series happens. Also, in addition to Quindo, our local media lab, and the Flemish Audio Visual Fund. And thank you also to Carlos and Sandra, who are being the technical wizards tonight. I appreciate it. And of course, I would be remiss not to thank our wonderful panelists for the evening, Kimberly, Georgios, Elizabeth, Kobe, and Leonard. Thank you so much for sharing your inputs. Don't forget to give also the Game for Thought podcast a listen. The Game for Thought podcast is hosted by our visual effects major coordinator, Robin Roday, in addition to Ruth Coppins, who is a Howest journalism student. So go ahead, give it a listen on Spotify. The latest episode about psychology in games just came out this week. So go ahead, give it a listen. And we can't wait to have you join us after the holiday break, February 16th. We'll be discussing a lot of the topics that were broached tonight. Accessibility in games. So February 16th, we will see you again right here on Twitch, covering the topic of accessibility. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever it is that you are. And we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.